Hey, Rent to Retires, it's Adam Schroeder here, and today we are going to talk about doing your due diligence. Before we get started today, I want to remind everybody, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, click the notifications bell, make sure you're not missing any of the content that we're putting out trying to make you the smartest investor you can be. Remember, education is your number one thing whenever you're making a move. As soon as you get yourself educated a little bit, you can start doing. So make sure you subscribe, click the notifications bell, don't miss any of this content or the content that we're putting out twice a week on our podcast that you can find at renttoretirement.com. So let's get into today's episode, which is part one of doing your due diligence. Today, we're going to talk about finding comps, verifying rent, and property taxes. So what does finding comps mean? Oh, actually, let's start with, what does due diligence mean? Well, due diligence is probably what you think it is. It is simply looking over your property and making sure the numbers that you've seen from your pro forma, that you've been told by the seller, that you've been told by your agent or whoever you're using to get your numbers are accurate. Remember, trust but verify. You know, they're probably telling you the truth about how much the rent is. They're probably telling you the truth about how much the property taxes are. But are they going to be accurate when you purchase the property? Especially if you're buying a home that's been recently renovated, that can change numbers quite a bit, and we'll get into that in a minute. So let's talk first off about finding the sales price. Remember, there's a big difference based on the current condition of the property as to how much it's going to cost. But you can get a general idea if you're paying the right amount by several ways. Number one, you can go on the MLS or the multiple listing service to see what homes in the area are selling for. Now, you can't go into the back end of it and see like all of the details that your real estate agent can see unless you are an agent yourself and have access to it. But pretty much, any realtor's website or, a lot of cities and areas have their own MLS you can go on and look at and just see the front end where you can see, square footage, rooms, year built, price that people want. You can see in general the areas around kind of what are properties selling for, what are 3 bedrooms selling for, what are 2 bedrooms selling for, what's the price per square foot, how can you extrapolate that to the property you're looking at. You can get a good idea from that. You can also go to websites like Zillow or Realtor.com and get an idea of what's being sold there at this time. But remember, you are only seeing asking prices on these. It's not necessarily the actual sales price or the concessions that the seller is making at close. They might be adding in $5,000 for flooring that needs to be redone in some parts of it. Or, maybe they're paying some closing costs that they wouldn't otherwise. So one thing you can do is do some research on your market and see how much their items are selling for. Are homes selling for 90% of listing on average, 103% of listing price on average? And you can get a general idea based on what you're seeing on the MLS, on Zillow, on Realtor.com, and those kind of websites. If it's asking $100,000 for, that general property, then maybe you should offer 95. Maybe you should offer 103. It can vary widely just based on your market and what the conditions are at that time. You can also go to redfin.com and they have a tool that you can use that shows you kind of recent sales, and you can look back on that as well. If you know that other homes have been sold in the area, you can also go to the appraisal district and look and see kind of what the most recent sales prices were. So that's one way that you can find your comps. Let's also get into now the verifying the rent. Now, if there's a tenant in place, you're going to want to ask to see the lease. You want to make sure that they are actually paying the amount that you've been told, and you want to know, when is this lease going to end? But that doesn't necessarily tell you what the rent will be when that lease ends. You need to find out, are they paying market rent? Are they paying below market rent? Are they paying above market rent? Because what you don't want to do is go in on a tenant that is paying $1,000 a month for your property and then find out, oh, they're paying $200 over market. So if they leave, suddenly you're having to replace them with a tenant and your cash flow just got hit with a $200 loss. Now, it might still be a good deal, but you want to know these numbers before you're going in. So how can you verify rents? Well, you can go to some of the same websites as before. You can go to the MLS and see if your MLS has rental listings. A lot of them do. You can also go on Zillow or Realtor.com and see the rents that are being asked for there. Now, once again, these are asked for rents. They're not rents that are actually you can't verify that they're actually being achieved. You can just see, okay, 3 bedrooms within, a quarter to half a mile of my property are renting for $900, $1,000. So this person paying, $850 is either market or on the low end of market rent. So I can probably raise my rent whenever their lease comes due and not lose them. You can also go to Rentometer or Rentometer. It's rentometer.com. Now, this one you can fill in the address and the property size and the number of bathrooms and get a general idea. I've found, for the most part, all of their rent estimates have been low, but you can get a low-end feel, I guess, for the market and what it's doing there. But probably the best way to verify rents is to simply go to some property management websites and see what they have for sale. Property managers are always looking to either fill vacancies or get a list of people who are looking for properties so that when a vacancy comes up, they can simply email them out and have as short a vacancy as possible. Because remember, most of them get paid to place a tenant and get paid based on rent collected. So they want to get that tenant and they want to get them in so they can start collecting their management fee again. They don't want to be sitting there, not collecting money on a property they could. So you can look on their website and see, how much are properties of the same size, same, floor plans and all of that. How much are they renting for? Is that in line with what I'm getting on my pro forma? It's a pretty easy way. Now, remember, you can see it varies a lot. If you have something that was built in 1950 and you're comparing it to something built in 2000, those are going to be completely different potentially. That is all very dependent. Do they have granite countertops and you have Formica still? You still got stuff from the 70s that you need to update or charge less because it's just not as nice. You need to look and see the status and the condition of your home compared to the condition of the homes that you're seeing on these sites. Now we're going to get into property taxes, which are probably the hardest thing to verify out of everything you're going to deal with when it comes to this, because it is really hard to pin down a number until you get your property tax bill. And if that property tax bill is not what you think it is, it can really hurt. You could suddenly owe a huge chunk all at once, and then you are paying more, going forward. Because when your mortgage company, if you're paying it in escrow and they do an escrow analysis, they're going to say, hey, you owe us an extra $5,000 for this property. You need to pay it up right now or spread it out over the year, and we're still going to up it. So you need to make sure you're finding the right numbers. Now, one of the times these numbers may not be as accurate on the pro forma, one of the reasons is if you're buying a property that was recently made turnkey, or if it was, a BRRRR project you're doing, it really depends on if they're telling you the number that they're paying for property taxes or the number they expect you to pay on your property taxes. For instance, if they bought a property for $50,000, that sets in the market rate of $50,000 for that property. Because when they bought it, it was run down, it was a piece of junk, it needed a whole lot of work. So it was only worth $50,000. So their property taxes are going to be based on a $50,000 valuation. So maybe that first year they're paying $500 in property tax if the property tax is around 1% total for the property. Now suddenly you come along and they've fixed it up. They've put $30,000 into the property. They're selling it for a profit. So you pay $100,000. Well, suddenly, you're paying $1,000 a year in property taxes. Now, granted, that's not a lot of money, but when you start getting up into, your $250,000, $300,000 homes potentially, and you start dealing with higher property taxes in some states, that can really start eating into your returns and really changing what you're seeing on there. So you need to make sure you're getting the right property tax numbers. Now, how can you find out these numbers? Well, first off, you are going to want to talk to your seller and see what are you currently paying in property taxes, and are you basing the numbers that I'm seeing on what you expect me to pay or what you're paying. If they're not trying to trick you, if they're putting the numbers they're paying, they just don't know. So how can you find out? Well, you can go to your appraisal district and start searching the properties around. Now, every appraisal district, you can go in and you can see the public records of what people are paying in property taxes. The one thing you need to be careful of as you're searching the addresses around is looking to see what exemptions they have on their property. If you're going in and you're seeing homestead exemptions and those kind of things, or disability exemptions, that's going to reduce their property tax bill. So you want to start searching the addresses and the streets and homes around you and seeing, okay, this one is roughly the same size. It doesn't have any exemptions on it. I'm not going to have any exemptions on it. So what percentage are they paying? How much are they paying for their property taxes? And then you can get an idea of what their percentage is, which will then allow you to find out your percentage. You can see what their property tax bill was and kind of estimate what yours will be. You can also go to the tax assessor's website, and a lot of them have tools on them where you can estimate your property taxes based on the location where the home is. Every tax assessor usually has multiple districts because they can't just have one. Every school district has their own. All of these things factor into it. So you can enter your school district, your taxing zone, and you can see how much estimated they think you're going to be paying for that. So that is another way you can find a pretty good estimate as to how much you're going to be paying on property taxes, even if your seller is saying, this is what I'm paying, I have no idea what you're going to pay. So keep that in mind whenever you're searching. So that's going to end our first part of due diligence. I'll have a second part coming out next week. I hope you watch it. It's going to be covering all the rest of the things that you need to get started to make sure that you're buying a good investment. So remember, click the notifications bell, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If this video has been helpful for you, please click the like button, let the algorithm know that it's worth watching, let other people see it and say, hey, that might interest me. If there's anything that you're curious about that I didn't cover, or if there are any questions that you want us to cover in future videos or on our podcast, enter it in the comments below and we will get to it as soon as possible. Check us out at renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. You can see the properties we have available. You can listen to our podcast. You can see just who we are or schedule a time to talk with a member of our team to find either a property or another member of your team, like a lender or a 1031 exchange or anything like that. So check us out at renttoretirement.com, and I'll see you on the next video.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.